Hey everybody, Bill Faith here. Welcome back to STR Unfiltered. Got a little rock music playing for you guys today. I know that is highly unusual. This is the No Bullshit Podcast, STR Unfiltered, and today we've got another person that has literally no filter, no BS. She is a brand new member of my STR Super Team. I'm excited to have her on the podcast for the very first time. The #1 go-to agent in the entire country for you and me as STR investors. You probably already know who it is, Miss Avery Carl from the Short Term Shop. How are you, Avery?
I'm doing awesome. How are you, Bill?
Sorry, I didn't have any Iron Maiden to be able to play for your intro today.
Yeah, I think you have to pay licensing for that anyway, so I'll take what I can get.
Exactly. We'll change that. We'll get some licensing for the conference coming up on your intro music. Hey, thanks for joining me today. We just dive right in. So everybody knows who you are. I'm excited to have you on the podcast. I'm excited to see you tomorrow, actually. Everybody's flying in tomorrow for our deal. I just got one question for you. This is 10 minutes. I don't want to waste time, your time. What are the 2 or 3 things, Avery, that people that are investing today, what are the mistakes that they're making? What are some myths that you can bust? It's a different world today than it was a year ago, and I think a lot of people still think it's 2021 or 2022.
All right. So a couple things. One of them, which I could talk about in a number of different senses, is trying to reinvent the wheel. So first off, there is people see, everybody is an influencer now. Everybody's posting about what they're doing. And a lot of new investors will see people that are doing all these crazy, really, really cool things and think, well, I can't start a glamping thing, or I can't start a treehouse community, or insert crazy thing here, so I'm just not going to get started. You don't have to get a spaceship that blasts off 3 times a week. You just have to buy a house that will work in the market that you're buying in. So something that is what the tourists have come to expect. You make it cute. You set it apart a little bit from the rest of the pack, which does not have to be expensive. It can just be decorating it a little bit different than everything else. So that's one big one, is people comparing themselves to other people who might be on a different journey than them.
That's a big problem, isn't it? So, you have a big social media following. You have a group like I do, all that type of stuff. We see that all the time, right? And it's kind of like if somebody says something, it's Facebook official, it's got to be true. What do you think about people growing too fast?
So I have to have that conversation a lot because I myself grew pretty quickly, but I did not get myself into a scenario where if one of my properties underperforms, that then the rest of them are leveraged all to heck, with a bunch of HELOCs or a bunch of refinances, to where I've never done a cash out refinance. I have all my equity and everything. So I think growing as fast as you want to, that's good, but you do have to pay attention. Where I see a lot of people get messed up is leveraging too many properties against too many other properties, or getting too many partners involved. I was actually at a conference last year, and one of the other girls on a panel with me in front of 500 people said, "I'm looking for equity partners. Who wants to buy houses with me?" And I was like, oh my God, that sounds like a nightmare. Why would you want to have 100 partners when the goal is to eventually own things yourself without partners? A few partners to start out, great. You got to get your feet wet somehow. But getting too many partners, I think, especially too quickly, is a great way to end up burnt out and eventually getting out of it.
Have you ever had a partnership before?
I've had one partnership, and we are still besties. We were great friends before that, and we still are now. And the reason we got out of it was because it was a money partner situation. So it was on our 3rd and 4th properties. And we did the very typical, he was the money guy, we were the sweat equity people, and we split everything 50-50. And after about 2.5 years, we were like, hey, you know what? We can get our own properties now. And, do you want to buy us out? Because that way we don't have to and it was never a situation of, okay, this partnership has gone bad. It was just an us thing, saying we can buy our own properties now, and we can buy things to where we're making 100% instead of 50. So how do you want to do this? Thank you so much for the help. But let's move on here.
That is so awesome. This podcast is going to go off the rails really quick, but I want to unpack 2 things that you just talked about. I've done 27 startups. I've had outside, I won't count my wife because we're like one unit. but we've had partners 13 out of those 27 times. And a lot of them were before I went through what you did in a business, my Glow Golf business. It was a $32 million business. I couldn't have built that on my own, and I didn't have the capital to be able to do it. And I have a guy found me who put up all the money. And I think a lot of people think, Avery, like people like you and I, that we're just filthy rich when we started. We can go buy whatever we want. I know your story. I know my story, and that's just not the case. It's through, you know, if you didn't have that person, you probably wouldn't be sitting here today. If I didn't have mine, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today.
Yeah, it definitely, I think a lot of people who are not in the real estate investing space think those of us that have vacation rentals are just these rich people who have these houses that like rent them out when we're not using it. And that's not the case.
Right. You said that you've never done a cash out refi. Have you ever done a HELOC?
I've done one HELOC. On my second property, we HELOC'd about $15,000 out of our primary home to make that down payment. And we did that and we paid it back immediately. So while I am a big fan of leverage and I'm 98% Robert Kiyosaki, I do have that little 2% of Dave Ramsey in me where I don't like having owing money to anything. So, but I do like HELOCs because you can pay them back. But the deal is with us, with Luke and I, we always said we're paying this back first before we take any money to do anything else. And that's what we did.
I want everybody that's listening to go back. It's 6 minutes and 29 seconds right now. Go back 90 seconds and listen to what Avery said again. It's because once again, I think there's so many people out there, Avery, so many influencers, especially the young ones. Hey, cash out refis, reposition as quick as you can, HELOC as quick as you can. And they're leveraging debt upon debt upon debt upon STR. And when one goes bad, it's going to affect all the others. And there's usually not an easy way if you don't have equity to sell an asset, unless you're rich and you're just cash rich to be able to exit out of that. I've never done a HELOC. I've never done a HELOC in the real estate investing side. I did a HELOC in this house that I'm in many years ago to start a business, but very similarly to you, I paid it back immediately. So please be prudent with your cash when you're out there, folks. Don't get too leveraged. I'm the I'm right in the middle, Dave and Robert, right? And I have fortunately not had to do that. It scares me a little bit, especially when you do your primary home. And I'm like in no man's land here. So I've got a house that I live in that's worth about $2 million. I owe $300,000. I could easily pull out $1.5 million. And I literally, Avery, I have dreams at night. What could I do with that $1.5 million? You know, but then I wake up and I'm like, no, I'm not touching the home. I'm not, you know, you have a young family. Mine's a little bit older. Just that security of knowing that I don't have to work. This place is never going to be taken away from me if the shit hit the fan.
Yeah, I agree. And I think every day, like, I'm a very high anxiety person anyway. So I'm always like, man, things are going really good. Something bad's about to happen. The other shoe's about to drop. Anytime things are going really well, I'm like, oh, it's happening now. So I kind of unfortunately always have that in the back of my mind, which I think is part of the reason why we've been successful and why, you know, we aren't over leveraged, is because both of us in the back of our minds are like, but if all the shit hit can I cuss on this one?
It is a fucking explicit podcast. Don't worry about it. As long as your kids can't hear you, you're good.
If all the shit were to hit the fan, we could stay in the house that we're in. We could nothing would have to change, really. So that's our goal. And we think about now, we've got a lot of doors. It's like, well, should we pay some of these things off or should we buy more? Because it generates enough cash flow for us to be happy now. But it's like, so we could go buy more, but that's creating more work for us. Or we could pay one off and it will over double the income that it's making for us. So we're kind of in that weird space right now.
Because that middle space where you have, you know, like 40 to 70% equity, or 40, really probably 30 to 60% equity is a bad space, right? I mean, you're not putting your money to work and you've got all this equity sitting there. And I live in that space because I'm trying to pay everything down, but I'm also on the back end of my career. I'm much older than you are, trying to sunset. So you mentioned you're full of anxiety, and when things are great, you think about things could get bad. You know, I've been through that many times in 2008, you know, COVID, 9/11, the sales and loan crisis in the early 90s, you know, the stock market crashing at the millennium, all these things that I've lived through. And I kind of feel the exact same way. I know none of us have a crystal ball, but how are you planning how's your investment strategy now? And what do you think the outlook is for the next 12 to 24 months?
So interest rates are going to continue to be a thing. And I mean, obviously I don't have a crystal ball, but I watch CNBC like every morning for 2 hours while I'm making the kids breakfast and getting them ready to try and like keep an eye on what everybody's saying about the economy. And who knows? I mean, I don't think that interest rates are going to get terribly much higher. I think we have a couple more hikes coming, and then I think they're going to level off. I don't think they're necessarily going down this year. But I think that in terms of buying properties, it's the best time in the past 5 years to be a buyer, because a lot of that, 2 years ago, yeah, the interest rates were low, but you had to pay like 100,000 over asking for every single property for your offer to even be considered. And now you can actually negotiate and, get sellers to come off of that purchase price, or maybe to give you money towards closing costs that you can then use to buy down your interest rate. Value add is always a good way to go. Properties that you can add value to, and by add value, I mean appraisal value. I mean, you can always add income by, with decor and things, but I'm talking about the actual value of the property. Value add's a good thing to look at right now, just to make sure. I don't think we're going to see like huge drops in purchase prices, but we're seeing some softening for sure. So it's really hard to say. You just kind of have to be careful, like, with anything at any time in the economic cycle.
So we are past the 10-minute time, but we're going to go into bonus time, everybody. So Avery's too good to let go in 10 minutes. So I want to ask you, so if you're just joining us, this is Avery Carl. She's a founder of the Short Term Shop. She's the #1 go-to short-term rental agent broker in the entire country. She has a super keen knowledge and expertise in vacation rental markets. And I want to talk about one that you're really branded with, and I think you got started there, is really the Smoky Mountains.
Yeah.
The Smoky, you talk about, and I believe the same thing. You can buy a $500,000 property. You just got to figure out how you're going to differentiate it, position it, and market it. How does somebody do that in the Smokies today? If they're looking to invest, if I'm your older brother or your friend of your dad's, and I'm investing, and he says, "Hey, talk to Avery, she's the expert." And I say, "Avery, I've got 200 grand cash. I'm willing to spend $1 million on a property. What are you telling me to buy as a family friend, and where?"
So depending on what your goals are. So some people really want to see like full calendar capacity. So in that case, you want a 1 or a 2 bedroom, because they're going to be booked. They have a much higher occupancy rate. But if you go up to like the 4-bedroom range, you are going to make more money. You're just going to have a lower occupancy rate. So what I would say, the good thing about the Smokies, like, yes, there's a zillion short-term rentals there. That's another thing. Back to your first question, mistakes that I see people make is avoiding a market because there's a lot of short-term rentals there. So there's a lot of short-term rentals for a reason, guys. If you go in.
Let's go invest, 100 miles outside of Norman, Oklahoma, where there's no traffic. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be Broken Bow. Sorry.
Yeah. So if you buy somewhere where there's none, that's great. But just because if there's a lot, it's easy. For the infrastructure makes it easier. There's cleaners, there's handymen, there's all these people already there. You don't have to go, train somebody to do something. They all kind of know what they're doing already. And the tourism is there. So anyway, the good thing about the Smokies is that even though there are lots of rentals, and there always have been, a lot of them that hit the market that go for sale they're still grandma cabins. And the good thing about cabins is they're tongue and groove. So it's not like there's that much you have to do to update a cabin. You paint the cabinets a cute color, you change it. Almost everything that hits the market too still has laminate countertops. Accent walls are a big thing. It's very easy to do an accent wall. It is very easy to do like a dark navy or a dark gray or even a white accent wall to kind of do the whole Nordic vibe rather than the grandma cabin vibe. So it's really not difficult to do something like that. And it costs very little to set it apart and, just update furniture. Everything that hits the market in the Smokies has log furniture and bare decor. That's really easy to change.
So if Avery Carl and if Avery and Luke are buying a cabin in Pigeon Forge, what type of furniture are you going to put into that cabin? Are you doing the live edge beds and that type of stuff, or are you going to go something different against the grain?
I hate to be basic like this, but the modern farmhouse furniture it goes in there easy. It looks like it's supposed to look. It doesn't look like, you're trying to make a New York City loft out of a cabin in the Smokies, but it's not that. I'm over log furniture. I'm tired of log furniture. It's cool and all, but every single cabin has that. So if you do I hate that I'm saying this because I loathe shiplap, but the Chip and Joanna vibe totally works in the Smokies. It looks cute. It looks updated. It still looks like it belongs in a cabin. So modern farmhouse all the way.
Modern farmhouse. I love it. It's interesting that you talk about those laminate cabinets. My wife just got on a flight to Montana. Now remember, and that's why I'm kind of, trying to zone in with her, with the vibe wearing my camo today, because I couldn't go with her. I'm really disappointed. And when you and Luke go out to Wyoming, you're going to have to get rid of the AC/DC shirts and throw on some camo and stuff like that.
Yeah, we'll get it. We got it.
But the house that we bought, laminate, old, probably built in early 2000s, it has the old Formica or laminate countertops and the same stuff in the bathroom. And we don't have a huge budget to put 150 grand. And to your point, we're doing the kitchen countertops and we're remodeling the 2 bathrooms. And then she's doing murals and hand painting some mountains in a bedroom and, stuff like that. You don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on these cabins.
Yeah, you really.
Avery, what if I'm going into the Smokies, Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, or Sevierville? Where do I have to be within a mile of Dollywood? What location should I be looking at there?
So if you're doing the Smokies, all of it is going to rent relatively similarly. So Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg, even though they are their own municipalities, they're really more like districts inside the larger municipality of Sevierville. So Sevierville envelops Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg. So a Sevierville address does not mean that it's north of Pigeon Forge. It could be way south, just one step outside of the Gatlinburg city limits and still have a Sevierville address. I would say buy where the best deal pops up, because as long as you're within a 30-minute drive time of either the strip in Pigeon Forge or the strip in Gatlinburg, not equidistant, that's not possible to do, but either or, then you're in good shape.
So folks, she said something there that hopefully all of you caught. Buy the best deal, right? Buy the best deal. That is something that Kenny and I, by the way, for those of you that are going to get ready to typing out, my email address to send me hate mail about Broken Bow. I love Broken Bow, but if you want to send Kenny Bedwell, a hate email about the date on Broken Bow or Logan, Ohio, it's Kenny at strinsights.com. Send him those emails, not me. Just kidding. What's number 2 of the biggest myth or mistake of people that are investing today to get back on track here?
So I guess number 2 was not investing somewhere because there's a lot of short-term rentals there. And then
let's unpack that for a second,
okay.
Avery, because you're in the Panhandle, you're in Destin, you're in the Smokies. Those are the 2 markets outside of probably Orlando where, I'm looking to make a pretty large investment there right now and working with one of your guys to try to find the right spot. Those are the 3 markets that typically pop up that, oh my God, it's oversaturated. I cannot invest there. Well, I mean, how do you talk somebody off that ledge? I kind of use the McDonald's Burger King analogy.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that analogy. The other thing that I would add to that is that I have the unique perspective of being the demographic that grew up in an area that visited both of those markets all the time when I was a kid. I'm from Mississippi. So my argument there would be that everything in these markets has always been a short-term rental. So I actually, for short-term rental, a Build Short-Term Rental Wealth conference, was looking at some data for my presentation, and I was looking at how many rentals were on AirDNA, because that's what I have access to, in 2015 when I bought my first one, and how many are now. So in 2015, it says that there were 800, there were less than 1,000 short-term rentals in the Smokies. That is not true. There were thousands, there were tens of thousands, but there were less than 800 that were on a measurable platform, which is Airbnb and VRBO. Everything else was on old mom and pop short-term rental, vacation rental management companies that don't use those platforms. So it's not that there are 10 times the amount, because I think last year it said there were 8,000 in the same area that I searched. There are not 10 times the number of short-term rentals. There are just 10 times the amount that are now on Airbnb and VRBO. Same thing in the Florida Panhandle or Gulf Shores or anywhere. All those properties have always been short-term rentals. It's just as of the past like 5 years, I would say, that self-managing a short-term rental has become a viable strategy. So a lot of those that already existed are just moving onto those platforms. So it's moving off of mom and pop property management companies onto Airbnb and VRBO, which is now measurable. But there have always been thousands and thousands. It's not that thousands of investors are coming into these areas and buying things that used to be primary homes and that used to be long-term rentals and converting them and flooding the market. That's all that ever was there. It's just a changing of the style of management now.
Really seeing that over the last 12 months in Western North Carolina, you know, in it's been the Banner Elk, Beach Mountain, Boone, you know, Newland, Seven Devils area has been a very, very sleepy second home market. And those small like Blue Ridge vacation rentals, the small, you know, that have 20, 30, 50 properties. And they're just, like Avery said, they're just listing on their own sites. And there's not even a regional up there, you know. So that's the saturation of a market. And I do believe in trying to find secondary markets, but the secondary market still has to have volume. It has to have a traffic driver. It's one of the reasons, like if you listen to the two other podcasts that you guys should be listening to are STRnomics with me and Kenny Bedwell from STR Insights and Avery's from the Short Term Shop. And you'll see that none of us are investing in the markets that have less than probably 400, 500 STRs in it. There's no, if that market hasn't built up by now, there's probably not enough traffic drivers to make significant investments into those markets. Avery, your parting shot?
I would say don't get caught up in what other people are doing. You know, run your own race. What do they say? Winners focus on winners focus on winning, losers focus on winners. So run your race, worry about what you're doing. Don't look at what other people are doing. Worry about yourself and you'll get there.
I'm going to just add one thing on that. A lot of people followed me into Western North Carolina, and I'll just let you know, it was over 100 days. It was close to 120 days before I announced publicly that I'd done anything in Banner Elk, North Carolina. By that time, my 85 people in my mastermind already know about it, and there was like 8 or 9 investments that were made out of there. Understand when somebody, I hate this word, Avery, but when any influencer, Avery, myself, whoever, we're keeping this shit private for our own family when we're making investments. It's like when you watch Ron and Son on MSNBC or whatever. But if we're investing in the market based off what we see at MSNBC, we're like a day behind everybody else, right? So I wouldn't want to be a day trader following that stuff. So I think you look at every deal, like Avery said earlier, go into a great market, go into the Smokies, go into Western North Carolina, Broken Bow, you know, the wine country of Texas, but buy the deal. Run your performas. You never buy a market. The market is where you want to enter, and that's what starts the research process. So, Avery, I'm so excited that you joined me today. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
And at the conference.
Yeah.
All right, just a sneak peek. What shirt are you wearing tomorrow? I know it's either got to be AC/DC, okay, Iron Maiden, Megadeth, or Guns N' Roses, I'm thinking.
So I actually got a few new ones for this. I got Rat Out of the Cellar 1984.
Wow.
I got Ozzy Speak of the Devil, and then I also got Dio, and I can't remember which one it was, but I did get a Dio shirt.
That's going to be legit. And I know I don't know where this studio is we're going to be tomorrow, but I'm sure we'll be able to get you over to, what was it? The Black Ivy? What's the name of that place?
Black Shag Vintage.
Black Shag. We'll make sure to get you over there. Awesome. Thanks for joining me, Avery. Everybody, thanks for listening to the STR Unfiltered podcast. Make sure you check out Avery's on the Short Term Shop. We'll see you guys next time.